Hey guys, tonight we drift back, way back, to a time before alarm clocks, before blackout curtains, before the very concept of a mattress was even a twinkle in a sleepy caveman's eye. We're tracing the drowsy, meandering path of the common nap. A history so profoundly uneventful it's practically a sedative. Picture yourself not in a cozy bed, but standing on a vast, sun-scorched savanna. The air shimmers with heat, and in the distance, a lion yawns, displaying teeth meant for something far more dramatic than a yawn. You're hungry, you're tired, and every shadow holds a potential predator that finds you deliciously slow. This is your reality. You probably won't survive this. The margin for error is thinner than a sheet of papyrus. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. For everyone listening tonight, feel free to post your location and local time in the comments. It's always fascinating to see where in the world we're collectively winding down. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Your feet ache, you've been trudging since dawn, the hard-packed earth unforgiving beneath your soles. Your small band is on the move, tracking a herd, foraging for anything edible: berries, tubers, the occasional unlucky rodent. The African sun is a merciless tyrant, high in its zenith, beating down with an intensity that saps your will, your strength, your very consciousness. Your brain, a magnificent but energy-guzzling organ, is running on fumes. Every thought is molasses slow. Your reaction time is lagging like a bad internet connection. This isn't just fatigue. It's a critical systems failure in an environment that punishes weakness without a second thought. To push on now is to make a mistake. A misstep could mean a broken ankle. A lapse in attention could mean missing the signs of that lioness crouched in the tall grass. This isn't about luxury. It's about calculus. The calorie expenditure of continuing in this heat, with this mental fog, outweighs the potential gains. Stopping is the smarter strategic move, and so, you find a relatively safe spot. Maybe it's the lee side of a large rock formation, casting a narrow stripe of shade. Maybe it's beneath the scant cover of an acacia tree, though you keep one eye open for thorns and the other for predators. You don't get into bed. You slump. Your body settles onto the ground, muscles groaning in relief. This is the primal genesis of the nap. It's a hard reset, a biological imperative. Evolutionary pressure didn't just make us smart or fast. It made us efficient. It encoded into our very DNA the need to strategically power down during periods of high environmental stress and low opportunity. That post-lunch coma you feel in your modern office? That's a million-year-old echo of your ancestors wisely deciding not to get heat stroke while the world baked around noon. Your body is still running that ancient software, whispering on a loop. Peak sun equals peak danger equals time to find a rock and check out for a bit. This wiring is what scientists call the biphasic sleep pattern. It's not some quirky lifestyle choice. It's our factory setting. Your circadian rhythm has two natural dips, the big one at night, of course, but a significant, smaller one in the early afternoon, typically between 1 and 3 p.m. This is the well-trodden path your body naturally wants to walk. Historians still argue whether this biphasic pattern was a rigid-to-sleep system or a more flexible tendency toward a midday rest period, but the evidence from pre-industrial societies is overwhelmingly in favor of the nap. It was a scheduled pit stop for the human engine. A quirky tidbit from this era: some anthropologists believe our ability to sleep deeply and quickly, a skill essential for an effective nap in a dangerous environment, may be linked to our development of language. The ability to have someone else stand watch and whisper, "Hey, a saber-toothed tiger is coming," required complex communication, allowing others to relax more fully. Your ability to doze off on a train might literally be thanks to the first person who said, "I'll take the first watch." So you lie there in the shade, the world reduced to the sound of your own breathing and the distant buzz of insects. The line between sleep and wakefulness is blurred, thin. You are not unconscious, not fully. Your ears are still tuned to the frequency of danger, a sudden silence and the insect hum, a new scent on the wind. This is vigilant rest. It's a light doze, a system on standby, ready to boot up to full panic mode in a nanosecond. It's not the dead-to-the-world sleep of a safe, modern night. It's a nervous, twitchy, absolutely essential state of being, and as you drift in that hazy space, you are participating in the most ancient of rituals, one that ensured the survival of the species. You are not being lazy. You are being smart. You are, quite literally, following your programming. The sun begins its slow, lazy crawl across the sky, and for a precious hour, you are off the clock. recharging for the hunt, the gathering, the sheer effort of existence that will resume when the world cools. This is where our story begins, not with a bang, but with a soft, necessary sigh of relief. The Mesopotamian sun is a different kind of beast altogether. It doesn't just beat down, it consumes. It swallows the great rivers, the Tigris and Euphrates, turning the air into a wet, heavy blanket that you have to push through with every step. You're no longer a hunter-gatherer on a vast savanna. You are a laborer in the cradle of civilization, and civilization, you're quickly learning, is incredibly sweaty, tedious work. The ziggurat isn't going to build itself. The irrigation channels need constant digging to keep the all-important barley fields from withering into dust. Your tunic, a rough, woolen thing, is plastered to your skin by mid-morning. By noon, your vision swims, the baked mud bricks of the city walls shimmering in the heat haze. The siesta, you realize, wasn't invented here, it was surrendered to. It was a mandatory concession to a climate that would otherwise cook its inhabitants alive. The first timekeeper wasn't a sundial, it was the sheer, unbearable weight of the midday sun. You trudge home from the worksite, your mind as numb as your aching shoulders. The streets of Ur are quieter now. The frantic energy of the morning market has dissipated. Even the flies seem lethargic. You step into your mud brick home, and the change is immediate. It's dark, it's cool. The thick walls do their job, repelling the fury of the sun, creating a cave-like sanctuary. This isn't a nap of evolutionary strategy anymore. It's a nap of pure, unadulterated relief. You collapse onto a simple reed mat, not even bothering with a blanket. The world outside ceases to exist. There is only the delicious sensation of coolness on your skin and the profound, all-consuming need to not move a single muscle for the next several hours. The city, in a rare moment of unified agreement, has simply pressed pause. This division of the day was so fundamental to Mesopotamian life that it became embedded in their language. The day was cleaved into by this period of enforced rest. The heat was a tyrant that dictated the terms of existence for everyone, from the lowest laborer to the king himself. While you're sprawled on your mat in a dead stupor somewhere in a palace, a scribe is perhaps making the first ever record of this practice, etching cuneiform symbols into a damp clay tablet that will be baked hard in a kiln, preserving this most mundane of facts for millennia. He's probably complaining about the heat, too. A mainstream historical fact is the sheer organizational sophistication of Mesopotamian society, which managed massive public works projects and intricate trade networks, all while strategically avoiding sunstroke for half of every day. They understood that a rested worker was a productive worker, a concept modern corporate culture is still painfully relearning. A quirky tidbit from this era involves the Mesopotamian approach to dreams, which they believed were messages from the gods or glimpses into the future. So, while you're napping, you're not just resting, you're potentially opening a divine hotline. A particularly vivid dream during your siesta might send you scurrying to a Yilu, a dream interpreter, who would consult his tablets of omens to tell you what your vision of a flying donkey or a talking fish actually meant for your barley harvest. Historians still argue whether the practice of the midday rest was a bottom-up phenomenon, demanded by exhausted workers, or a top-down decree from rulers who realized their entire workforce would collapse without it. The truth is likely a combination of mutual, unspoken agreement between the powerful and the powerless that sometimes the sun wins. The continuity from our savanna-dwelling ancestors is palpable, but the context has shifted dramatically. The threat is no longer a predator in the grass, but the environment itself, shaped by human ambition. You sought shade from a rock then, you seek shade from a man-made wall now. The principle is identical: strategic retreat. As you drift into a hazy, heat-drenched sleep, the sounds of the city are muted, replaced by the gentle snoring of your family and the faint, lazy buzz of a bee trapped somewhere in the room. This pause is the glue holding the day together. It is the silent, sweaty heart of Mesopotamian life. Without it, the great walls would never have been raised, the Epic of Gilgamesh would never have been written, and civilization would have simply napped outside. The sun continues its relentless assault, but for a few precious hours, it assaults an empty battlefield. You are offline, recharging, preparing for the second shift that will begin as the shadows lengthen and the world becomes habitable once more. The air in the Nile Valley doesn't just feel hot, it feels deliberate. It hangs with a weighty, divine intention, and as the sun, Ra, climbs to his peak in the celestial bark, you understand this isn't merely a weather pattern. It's the focused gaze of a god. You're an laborer, part of a crew hauling limestone blocks for a pharaoh's eternal resting place, and your world has been reduced to two sensations: the searing heat of the stone beneath your fingers, and the dull throbbing ache in every muscle. The Egyptian sun doesn't suggest a rest. It commands it. By high noon, the world turns white and silent, a blinding, oppressive stillness that feels like punishment. The sand radiates heat in waves, distorting the figures of the overseers and the distant, shimmering palms along the riverbank. You're not just tired, you're parched, lightheaded, and there's a faint, high-pitched ringing in your ears that you've come to recognize as the sound of your own body, begging for mercy. This is the wrath of Ra, or at least, that's what the priests say. They teach that during the sun's highest, most potent point, Ra's power is so immense it becomes dangerous to mortals. His energy doesn't just sustain life, it can scorch it away. The midday slump, that overwhelming desire to close your eyes and escape, isn't a personal failing or a sign of laziness in this world. It's a theological event. You are quite literally hiding from the fury of a deity. So, when the overseer finally signals the cessation of work with a sharp clap of his hands, it isn't just a lunch break, it's a retreat from a divine battlefield. You stumble into the shade of a half-constructed wall or a makeshift reed awning, collapsing onto a woven mat with a gratitude that feels religious in its own right. You are obeying a celestial order written in heat, stroke, and sweat. Here, the nap is sanctified. It's woven into the very fabric of their understanding of the cosmos. While you drift into a fitful, heat-drenched doze, the wealthy and the powerful in their villas are doing the same, but with considerably more style. They might retreat to a shaded room on the north side of the house, their servants fanning them with palm fronds, the air scented with lotus blossoms floating in a shallow basin of water. They understood the principle of coolness, of darkness, of quiet. This was the birth of the siesta as a practice of wellness, not just survival. A mainstream historical fact is the Egyptians' advanced understanding of the body. Their medical papyri detailed treatments for everything from headaches to digestive issues, and rest was often a primary prescription. They intuitively knew what science would later confirm, that the body heals and restores itself during periods of deep rest. A wonderfully quirky tidbit involves their use of sleep aids to encourage pleasant dreams and ward off bad spirits during this vulnerable daytime sleep. An Egyptian might place a headrest carved from wood or stone, often shaped like the god bees, a protector of the household, at the nape of their neck. They might also wear an amulet or recite a spell from a magical text before dozing off, attempting to curate their nap experience on a spiritual level. Historians still argue whether the common laborer actually believed they were hiding from Ra's wrath, or if this was an elegant myth constructed by the priestly class to explain a biological inevitability and control the workflow of a massive society. Was it faith or clever management? The answer is probably both, intertwined like the strands of a papyrus scroll. The continuity from Mesopotamia is clear. The unforgiving sun remains the primary antagonist, but the Egyptian response is richer, more layered with meaning. Your nap isn't just a physical necessity, it's a spiritual act of deference. As you lie there, the stone still warm beneath your mat, you can almost feel the gaze of Ra passing over you. The silence of the work site is profound, broken only by the buzzing of flies and the ragged breathing of your fellow workers. In this collective, exhausted silence, you are participating in a ritual as old as the pyramids themselves. You are acknowledging the power of the gods and the fragility of your own flesh. It's a humbling, daily reminder that for all of humanity's grand projects and ambitions, we still must yield, every single day, to the ancient, rhythmic demands of our own bodies and the universe that contains them. The shadow of the wall inches slowly across the ground, a silent sundial counting down the moments until Ra's chariot moves on and you can rise, temporarily spared, to continue building eternity. The air in Athens is thick, but not with the oppressive, divine heat of Egypt. It's thick with argument. You're not hauling stones anymore, you're hauling ideas, and frankly, it's exhausting in a completely different way. You recline on a simple a couch, in the corner of a symposium that's well into its third hour. The wine is watered, but the rhetoric is undiluted, a torrent of words about forms and ethics, and the nature of the soul. Your head swims, and it's not from the wine, it's from the sheer, relentless effort of trying to keep up. Across the room, a man named Plato is holding forth, his gestures precise, his logic a labyrinth you keep getting lost in. And then you see him, Aristotle. He's not even looking at Plato. His head is tilted back, his eyes are closed, and his breathing is deep and steady. The greatest mind in the known world is taking a nap, right here, right in the middle of the most important conversation happening on the planet. This is the Greek philosophical nap, and it is not a sign of weakness. It is a tool. For Aristotle, and for many of these thinkers, the mind wasn't a muscle to be strained until it snapped. It was a vessel to be filled, yes, but then allowed to settle. They observed that insights often arrived not in the heat of furious debate, but in the quiet moments after, in the space between waking and sleep, a space the Greeks called hypnagogia. The walls between ideas seemed thinner. Connections could be made that conscious, rigid logic could never forge. So, napping became a form of intellectual incubation. You'd chew on a problem, wrestle with the paradox, and then you'd deliberately step away. You'd close your eyes. You'd let the conscious mind drift, trusting the deeper, more mysterious parts of your psyche to keep working on it. The answer might arrive in a dream, or in that sudden, lucid moment upon waking, a gift from the subconscious. Aristotle napping wasn't him checking out. It was him putting his brain on a different, more productive task. This intellectual embrace of rest created a fascinating societal split. For the elite, the citizen philosophers, the nap was a badge of honor, a testament to a life devoted to thought rather than manual labor. They could afford to pause in the afternoon, to ponder the cosmos. It was a luxury, but a luxury with a purpose. Meanwhile, the vast majority of people, the farmers, the potters, the sailors, saw the day divided by the sun and their own exhaustion, not by intellectual curiosity. Their naps were still the ancient, practical kind, stolen in the shade of an olive tree after a back-breaking morning in the field. A mainstream historical fact is the Greek concept of arete, striving for excellence, and fulfilling one's purpose. For a thinker, excellence sometimes meant strategic disengagement to achieve a breakthrough. A wonderfully quirky tidbit involves the cult of Asclepius, the god of medicine. People would travel to his healing temples, the Asclepianes, for a cure. The treatment: they'd undergo incubation sleep. You'd lie down in a sacred abaton, a restricted hole, and hope the god would visit you in a dream to diagnose your ailment or prescribe a treatment. It was the ultimate power nap, with your health hanging in the balance. A priest would later interpret the dream for you. Historians still argue whether these temple sleeps were genuinely effective, due to the placebo effect and the body's natural ability to heal during prolonged rest, or if the priests employed subtle tricks and suggestions to guide the dreamer's narratives. It was part medicine, part theater, and all based on the potent Greek faith in the power of the sleeping mind. So, as you sit in that symposium, watching the great Aristotle snore softly, you understand the shift. The nap has been promoted. It's no longer just a retreat from the sun or a hiding place from a god. It's an active participant in the creation of culture. It's a creative act. The jokes here are wry, intellectual. Someone might quip that Aristotle is consulting with the muse of dreams, or that he is polishing his logic in the workshop of sleep. The pressure to be constantly, visibly productive is absent here. Value is placed on the outcome, the brilliant idea, not on the performative effort it took to get there. As the conversation swirls round the sleeping philosopher, you finally allow your own eyes to close. You're not being rude, you're being Greek. You're letting the fragments of the evening's debate, justice, beauty, truth swirl together in the dark behind your eyelids, hoping that when you wake, something new and coherent will have formed. The hum of conversation becomes a distant drone, a river of words you're no longer trying to swim in, but are simply floating upon. The marble is cool against your back, a stark and welcome contrast to the stifling heat of the Roman afternoon. You're not sitting, you're reclining. This is the first and most important distinction. You are in the triclinium, the dining room of a well-appointed Roman domus, and the world outside, the chaotic, noisy, smelly world of the Forum, feels a million miles away. The meridiatio is not a suggestion here. It is a ritual, a sanctioned pause woven into the very fabric of the elite Roman day. You've just finished the prandium, a light lunch of bread, cheese, and perhaps some fruit, and now the schedule demands stillness. The heavy woolen toga has been discarded for a lighter tunic. Slaves move with a practiced, silent efficiency, drawing shades to darken the room, perhaps sprinkling water on the mosaic floor to cool the air slightly. This isn't a collapse from exhaustion. It's a curated experience of rest, a performance of leisure that screams privilege and power. Your host, a portly senator with a well-greased beard, lets out a contented sigh as he settles onto his own couch. Odium, he murmurs, almost to himself. This is the key. Odium, leisure, free time. The absence of business negotium is not idleness to the Roman elite. It is an essential part of a cultivated life. It is the time reserved for philosophical discussion, for poetry, for reflection, and, crucially, for restorative sleep. To be able to nap in the heat of the day is to announce to the world that your time is your own, that you are not bound to the grueling sun-baked labor of the countless thousands who keep the empire running. Your nap is a status symbol. It says you have a slave to wake you, a cool house to sleep in, and no pressing need to be anywhere. The peasant napping under a tree is lazy. The senator napping on a finely carved couch is practicing virtue. This Roman embrace of the nap was heavily influenced by the Greek physicians they so admired. Galen, the medical titan of the Roman world, wrote extensively on the importance of digestion and its link to sleep. The body's heat, he theorized, was drawn inward after a meal to aid in the breakdown of food, leaving the limbs heavy and the brain sluggish. To exert yourself during this process was to invite illness. Therefore, the postprandial nap wasn't just pleasant, it was medically prescribed. A mainstream historical fact is the Roman obsession with health and bodily balance, their beliefs heavily influenced by the Greek theory of the four humors. The midday heat was seen as exacerbating an imbalance, and rest was the necessary corrective. They were meticulous about managing their health, and the nap was a key part of that regimen. A quirky tidbit from this era involves the Roman use of sleeping masks. While not as common as in later periods, there is evidence that some wealthy Romans used pieces of cloth or leather to cover their eyes to block out light for a better nap. More bizarrely, some believed in the power of specific stones. Pliny the Elder, in his Natural History, suggests that wearing a piece of jet could induce sleep, while agate was thought to prevent it. So your host might be reclining with a polished black stone resting on his forehead, hoping for a quicker journey to dreamland. Historians still argue whether the practice of the meridiatio was a genuine cultural import from the conquered Greeks or a natural evolution of the siesta habit that the Roman elites simply refined and made their own, dressing it up in the language of philosophy and medicine to justify a universally desired afternoon break. As you lie there in the dim, cool room, the only sounds are the gentle snoring of the senator and the distant, rhythmic splash of a fountain in the interior courtyard. The pressure is different here. It's not the pressure of survival or the intense focus of philosophy. It's the gentle, heavy pressure of full indulgence. The jokes here are wry observations about the absurdity of the world. Outside this quiet room, a bickering politician, a failed business deal. The nap is the ultimate expression of Roman control over their environment. They built aqueducts to bring water, roads to connect cities, and now, in this room, they have engineered a perfect pocket of cool tranquility in the heart of a sweltering city. You close your eyes, not to hide from a god or to incubate an idea, but simply because you can. It is a profound, luxurious, and utterly Roman power move. The world waits. The empire can manage without you for an hour. The cold is what shocks you first, a deep, damp, stone cold that seeps through your simple woolen habit and settles into your bones. The luxurious warmth of the Roman triclinium is 1,000 years, and a whole world away. You are a novice in a medieval monastery. And the night is not for uninterrupted slumber. It is divided, fractured by the divine office, a cycle of prayers that structures every single hour of the monastic day and night. You were jerked from your first deep sleep by the gentle, but insistent toll of a bell, and now you shuffle in the frigid darkness with your brothers toward the chapel. Your body screams in protest, a heavy, leaden thing yearning for the horizontal plane of your straw-filled palate. This is the antiphon to the Roman nap, not a sanctioned indulgence, but a sacred obligation that systematically dismantles the very concept of a full night's rest. The chapel is illuminated by a few flickering candles, their light dancing across stern-faced statues of saints. The chanting begins, a low, resonant drone in Latin that you're still struggling to understand. Vigils. This is the night office, held in the deepest, darkest part of the night. Your voice is a ragged croak, your eyelids are made of stone, and your mind is a fog. This is not about feeling holy or inspired. It is about obedience. It is about denying the flesh its most basic desire in order to elevate the spirit. The monastic day is a carefully engineered machine, designed to break the natural human sleep pattern and replace it with something altogether more divine and more exhausting. You will sleep again after this, but in fragments. Your life is now a series of naps punctuated by prayer, a perpetual state of drowsy devotion. This is the rhythm of the horarium. The canonical hours, matins, lauds, prime, terce, sext, none, vespers, compline. The names blur together in your sleep-deprived haze. Each office pulls you from your rest. Each return to your dormitory feels like a fleeting, precious surrender. The nap, therefore, is no longer a strategic retreat or a luxury. It is a stolen necessity. The meridiatio of the Romans is formalized here into a period of rest after the midday meal, following the office of sext. But this is no leisurely reclining. It is a silent, collective collapse onto hard beds, a desperate hour of shut-eye before the bell tolls again for none. A mainstream historical fact is the immense cultural and agricultural preservation undertaken by monasteries. They were the libraries, hospitals, and breweries of the Dark Ages, and they were all run by men surviving on a brutally interrupted sleep schedule. A quirky tidbit from this era involves the role of the circator, a monk appointed to patrol the dormitories and common areas during rest periods. His job? To check for somnolence during prayers. Yes, but also to ensure no one was engaging in the sin of laxity, a sort of spiritual apathy, or listlessness that often manifested as, you guessed it, excessive sleepiness or napping outside of appointed times. So you could be chastised for not being alert during vigils, but also for napping too enthusiastically later. It was a delicate balance. Historians still argue whether this fractured sleep pattern of first sleep and second sleep, with a period of wakefulness in between, was a cultural imposition of the church, or merely the formalization of a natural pre-industrial human rhythm that electricity and modern life later erased. As you finally stumble back to your cell after vigils, the cold air biting at your face, the chant still echoing in your skull, you understand the nap differently. It is a tiny rebellion of the body against the rigid demands of the spirit. It is a reclaiming of a primal need. When you are granted that hour of rest after sext, you don't philosophize about it. You don't see it as odium. You plunge into it with the desperation your Roman ancestor could never comprehend. The scratchy wool blanket feels like a king's finery, the hard pallet a cloud, the silence of the dormitory, broken only by the snores of dozens of exhausted men, is a sweeter hymn than any Gregorian chant. In this world of stone and ritual, the common nap has been sanctified, scheduled, and stripped of all luxury. It is, quite simply, a lifeline. The desert sun is a hammer on an anvil, and you are the metal. It flattens you. It drains the very thought from your mind, leaving behind a blank white heat. You're a traitor, part of a caravan trudging along a spice route, and the world has shrunk to the back of the camel in front of you, the gritty taste of sand in your mouth, and the overwhelming monotonous need to just keep moving. But then, a miracle. The caravan master, a man with a face like worn leather, calls a halt. It's not yet noon, but the sun is already a tyrant. Kailula, he says, the word itself sounding like a sigh of relief. There is no debate, no questioning. It is time. This is not a suggestion. It is a tradition carried across the dunes for centuries, a practice whispered from parent to child, a sacred pause woven into the fabric of faith and survival. You help the others tether the camels, their groans of relief echoing your own. There's no grand shelter, no villa. You simply find what shade you can, the lee side of a large rock, the scant shadow cast by a stooped acacia tree. You unroll a thin mat onto the burning sand and collapse. This is the Kailula, the pre-noon nap deeply embedded in Islamic tradition, famously practiced and recommended by the Prophet Muhammad. It's a strategic retreat, much like your earliest ancestors on the savannah, but now infused with a profound spiritual significance. It's not just about avoiding heat stroke. It's about following the sunnah, the way of the prophet. It's an act of worship through self-care, a reminder that to care for your body is to honor the gift given by the Creator. The nap becomes a form of obedience, a reset button for the soul as much as for the body. As you lie in the shade, the world reduces to a narrow strip of coolness. The scorching wind feels slightly less punishing here. You can feel your heart rate slowing, the frantic pulse in your temples easing. This practice is championed for its tangible benefits. It rejuvenates you for the later prayer, especially the night prayers of Tahajjud. It helps you avoid the laziness that can come from the post-lunch slump, and it sharpens the mind for the rest of the day's tasks. A mainstream historical fact is the incredible scientific and cultural advancements that flourished during the Islamic Golden Age, from mathematics to medicine to astronomy. Scholars like Al-Razi and Ibn Sina wrote extensively on the importance of sleep hygiene and balanced living. The Kailula was a practical application of this wisdom, a tool that allowed the mind to function at its highest capacity. A wonderfully quirky tidbit involves the concept of istikhara, a prayer often performed before sleep, asking for divine guidance in a decision. While typically associated with night sleep, it wasn't uncommon for someone to perform a quick istikhara before a Kailula, hoping for clarity or a sign in a dream upon waking. You might nap on a problem and hope to wake with the solution, a direct line from the desert to the divine. Historians still argue whether the widespread adoption of the Qaylula across the Islamic world was primarily due to its religious endorsement or its undeniable practical utility. In the hot climates of the Middle East and North Africa, was it faith that spread the nap, or was it the nap that so perfectly complemented the faith? The answer, likely, is a perfect, seamless blend of both. The continuity is striking. Once again, the environment dictates the rhythm. But here, the response is elevated, given a name and a purpose that transcends the merely physical. The jokes here are warm, communal, a fellow trader might mumble. Even the prophet needed a break from the heat before instantly drifting off. There's no guilt, no sense of laziness, only a collective, understood wisdom. As you drift into a light vigilant sleep, your ears still tuned to the sounds of the caravan, the shifting camels, the low talk of the guards. You feel a connection to every soul. Who has ever sought refuge from the sun in this way? You are participating in a ritual of wellness that is both ancient and timeless, a small act of faith performed with the body itself. The sun continues its relentless journey across the sky, but for now, you are still, you are resting, you are, in your own small way, praying. The first thing you notice is the ticking. It's a sharp, metallic, insistently regular sound from the new long case clock in the corner of the study. Tick, tock, tick, tock. It's nothing like the gentle, variable sounds that once measured time. The crowing of a rooster, the angle of the sun through the leaded glass, the call to prayer from a distant minaret. This sound is merciless. It divides the day into perfect, identical, unforgiving segments. You are a clerk, a man of letters in the 18th century, and the world is waking up to a new religion, efficiency. The Enlightenment isn't just about reason and liberty. It's about the meticulous, obsessive management of time, and time, you are coming to understand, is money. There is no room in this new equation for something as frivolous, as unproductive, as a nap. The luxurious, genius-sanctioned nap of the Renaissance is under siege. The image of the languid philosopher napping in his garden is being recast not as a sign of brilliance, but of decadent laziness. Thinkers like Benjamin Franklin are preaching a new gospel. There will be sleeping enough in the grave, he declared, a sentiment that would have baffled your Roman or Renaissance ancestors. The ideal man is no longer the contemplative thinker who naps to fuel his creativity. He is the industrious citizen, the merchant, the improver, whose every waking moment is dedicated to progress, profit, and self-betterment. To be caught napping is to be caught in a state of moral failure. You are not just resting. You are stealing time. From whom? From yourself, from your employer, from the forward march of civilization itself. This is a revolution measured in seconds. The widespread adoption of accurate mechanical clocks and, later, the strict schedules demanded by industrialization begin to sever the human body from its natural rhythms. Your body's innate desire for a postprandial dip, that ancient call of the biphasic sleep pattern, is no longer a biological fact to be accommodated. It is a weakness to be overcome, a vice to be conquered with cold water, strong coffee, and sheer force of will. A mainstream historical fact is the rise of the coffee house. In this era, they weren't just social hubs. They were fortresses against sleep, places where men went to stay awake, to talk business, to read pamphlets, and to fuel the new engine of capitalism with caffeine instead of rest. A wonderfully quirky, albeit depressing, tidbit from this time is the proliferation of anti-sleep devices. Satirical cartoons depicted terrifying contraptions designed to keep students or clerks awake. A water drip aimed at the face, a book rigged to fall on the head of the drowsy. More practically, the era saw the popularization of the night watchman's clock, a device that required a patrolling guard to physically key into stations at set times to prove he wasn't napping on the job. The suspicion of sleep was now being mechanically enforced. Historians still argue whether this dramatic cultural shift was primarily driven by the economic forces of early capitalism and the need to maximize labor, or by the Protestant work ethic, which framed hard constant work as a form of piety and idleness as a sin. Was it the factory owner or the preacher who killed the nap? As you sit at your desk, the scratch of your quill trying to compete with the relentless tick-tock, you feel the pressure in a way your predecessors never did. Your eyelids grow heavy after your modest noon meal, a natural, million-year-old process. But now, a wave of guilt washes over you with the fatigue. You glance at the clock, you calculate the minutes lost, you think of Franklin's stern, printed words, you fight it, you pinch the bridge of your nose, you take a sip of bitter, lukewarm coffee from a tin cup. The nap, once a sacred retreat, a spiritual act, a mark of genius, has been reclassified. It is now the enemy. It is the old, lazy, irrational world trying to drag you back into darkness and unproductivity. You straighten your back, you shake your head, and you force your eyes open. A soldier in a new war against your own biology. The clock ticks on, a metronome for a new, sleepless, and terribly efficient age. The first thing you notice is the ticking. It's a sharp, metallic, insistently regular sound from the new long-case clock in the corner of the study. Tick, tock, tick, tock. It's nothing like the gentle, variable sounds that once measured time, the crowing of a rooster, the angle of the sun through the leaded glass, the call to prayer from a distant minaret. This sound is merciless. It divides the day into perfect, identical, unforgiving segments. You are a clerk, a man of letters in the 18th century, and the world is waking up to a new religion, efficiency. The Enlightenment isn't just about reason and liberty. It's about the meticulous, obsessive management of time, and time, you are coming to understand, is money. There is no room in this new equation for something as frivolous, as unproductive as a nap. The luxurious, genius-sanctioned nap of the Renaissance is under siege. The image of the languid philosopher napping in his garden is being recast not as a sign of brilliance, but of decadent laziness. Thinkers like Benjamin Franklin are preaching a new gospel. There will be sleeping enough in the grave, he declared, a sentiment that would have baffled your Roman or Renaissance ancestors. The ideal man is no longer the contemplative thinker, who naps to fuel his creativity. He is the industrious citizen, the merchant, the improver, whose every waking moment is dedicated to progress, profit, and self-betterment. To be caught napping is to be caught in a state of moral failure. You are not just resting. You are stealing time. From whom? From yourself, from your employer, from the forward march of civilization itself. This is a revolution measured in seconds. The widespread adoption of accurate mechanical clocks and, later, the strict schedules demanded by industrialization begin to sever the human body from its natural rhythms. Your body's innate desire for a postprandial dip, that ancient call of the biphasic sleep pattern, is no longer a biological fact to be accommodated. It is a weakness to be overcome, a vice to be conquered with cold water, strong coffee, and sheer force of will. A mainstream historical fact is the rise of the coffeehouse. In this era they weren't just social hubs. They were fortresses against sleep, places where men went to stay awake, to talk business, to read pamphlets, and to fuel the new engine of capitalism, with caffeine instead of rest. A wonderfully quirky, albeit depressing, tidbit from this time is the proliferation of anti-sleep devices. Satirical cartoons depicted terrifying contraptions designed to keep students or clerks awake, a water drip aimed at the face, a book rigged to fall on the head of the drowsy. More practically, the era saw the popularization of the night watchman's clock, a device that required a patrolling guard to physically key into stations at set times, to prove he wasn't napping on the job. The suspicion of sleep was now being mechanically enforced. Historians still argue whether this dramatic cultural shift was primarily driven by the economic forces of early capitalism and the need to maximize labor, or by the Protestant work ethic, which framed hard, constant work as a form of piety and idleness as a sin. Was it the factory owner or the preacher who killed the nap? As you sit at your desk, the scratch of your quill trying to compete with the relentless tick-tock, you feel the pressure in a way your predecessors never did. Your eyelids grow heavy after your modest noon meal, a natural, million-year-old process. But now, a wave of guilt washes over you with the fatigue. You glance at the clock, you calculate the minutes lost, you think of Franklin's stern, printed words, you fight it, you pinch the bridge of your nose, you take a sip of bitter, lukewarm coffee from a tin cup. The nap, once a sacred retreat, a spiritual act, a mark of genius, has been reclassified. It is now the enemy. It is the old, lazy, irrational world trying to drag you back into darkness and unproductivity. You straighten your back, you shake your head, and you force your eyes open. A soldier in a new war against your own biology. The clock ticks on, a metronome for a new, sleepless, and terribly efficient age. The pressure is different here. It is not the physical pressure of a factory floor or the scorching gaze of a desert sun. It's a social pressure, a dense, invisible fog of judgment that permeates every richly decorated corner of the Victorian drawing room. You are a guest at an afternoon tea, and the performance of respectability is exhausting. The conversation is a minefield of propriety. The china is terrifyingly delicate, and your corset a weapon of mass constriction makes every breath a calculated effort. The heavy lunch of mutton and potatoes, washed down with strong, sweet tea, is now a leaden weight in your stomach. A profound, soul-deep weariness settles over you. Your eyelids feel like they are lined with lead shot. But you cannot, you absolutely cannot, succumb to nap here. In this world of antimacassars and strict etiquette, is to lose. It is a public admission of moral and physical failure. The Victorian era perfected the art of conflating health with character. A strong, upright, moral citizen was a wakeful citizen. Laziness was a sin, and sleepiness was its first cousin. The industrialists' war on sleep had trickled down from the factory and been codified into a domestic religion of constant, visible busyness. For the middle and upper classes, the afternoon slump wasn't a biological reality to be managed. It was a character flaw to be battled with cold showers, brisk walks, and the power of a stiff upper lip. The couch in the drawing room is a siren's call, a plush, velvet-covered trap that could ruin your social standing in a single, unguarded moment. This is where the nap becomes a silent class war. The working poor, if they could find a rare moment of respite, might still snatch a nap out of sheer physical necessity, and they were derided as lazy and shiftless for it. But for you, in this drawing room, to nap would be to align yourself with them. It would be a betrayal of your class. Instead, you engage in the sanctioned alternative, the rest cure. If you were a woman of a particularly nervous disposition, a catch-all term for anything from burnout to depression, you might be prescribed a version of rest. But it was a controlled, medicalized, and often oppressive form of inactivity, supervised by a physician, always a man and stripped of all pleasure. It was a punishment, not a respite. A mainstream historical fact is the Victorian obsession with health fads and moralizing medicine. From hydrotherapy to phrenology, the body was a machine to be controlled and optimized, and unregulated sleep was a sign of the machine breaking down. A wonderfully quirky tidbit from this era is the rise of Graham's crackers. The health reformer Sylvester Graham preached a doctrine of abstemious living, arguing that rich foods, spices, and meats led to carnal urges and general moral decay. His bland, whole-grain cracker was designed to promote digestive health and, by extension, moral purity. The logic followed that a pure digestive system would not cause the sluggishness that led to the desire for sinful afternoon naps, so you might be nibbling on a dry, virtuous biscuit specifically to avoid the scandal of nodding off. Historians still argue whether the Victorian crusade against napping was genuinely about beliefs in moral and physical health, or if it was primarily a performance of class identity, a way for the rising middle class to distinguish themselves from the lazy poor below them and the decadent aristocracy above them. So you sit, you pinch the soft skin on your wrist to jolt yourself awake, you take another scalding sip of tea, hoping the caffeine will arm you against the enemy within. You make inane chatter about the weather, your voice a little too bright, your smile a little too rigid. The pressure is immense, every blink feels too long, every lull in the conversation feels like a precipice. The couch mocks you with its plush emptiness. The nap has become the ultimate transgression, a surrender to the base animal self that this entire culture is dedicated to suppressing. You are at war with your own biology, and the battlefield is a floral-printed armchair. The clock on the mantelpiece ticks with a slow, cruel deliberation, each tick a verdict on your ability to maintain the fawade, to be good, to be awake. The couch is different. It's not a Roman Klein for luxurious reclining, nor a Victorian fainting couch for delicate swooning. This one is upholstered in a dark, textured fabric, firm but yielding, and it sits in the center of a quiet, book-lined study in Vienna. There are no clocks here. The only sound is the soft scratch of a pen on paper behind you. You are lying down, not because you are tired, but because you have been instructed to. This is the Freudian couch, and the activity you are engaged in is called free association. But as you stare at the ceiling, tracing the patterns in the plaster, your voice begins to slow. The words come farther apart. The weight of the hour, the dim light, the hypnotic drone of your own voice recounting a fragment of a dream. It pulls at you. The divide between free association and a free fall into sleep is surprisingly thin. You are napping, but you are napping on purpose. You are napping for science, for therapy, for the unlocking of the unconscious. Sigmund Freud, for all his later disputed theories, fundamentally changed the way the West thought about the mind, and by extension, sleep. He proposed that our waking selves are just the tip of the iceberg, and that the vast, submerged bulk of who we are, our desires, our fears, our repressed memories, lurks in the unconscious. And how does one access this forbidden realm? The gates were guarded during waking hours by a censor he called the ego. But during sleep, and in the drowsy, hypnagogic state just before it, the gates swing open. The nap, therefore, was no longer a simple act of physical restoration. It was a potential gateway, a liminal space where the repressed could bubble to the surface in the form of dreams, slips of the tongue, or those weird, half-formed thoughts you have just as you're dozing off. The afternoon slump became a psychological opportunity. This medicalized the nap in a whole new way. It wasn't about health or efficiency anymore. It was about insight. Patients were encouraged to relax, to let their minds wander, to report everything without filter. And in that state of profound relaxation, the body often took over and claimed the rest it needed. The psychoanalytic session, with its famous 50-minute hour, often became a sanctioned space for a therapeutic nap. The analyst, sitting out of sight, became the ultimate watchful guardian, allowing the patient to safely descend into a state of vulnerability they would never allow themselves in the outside world. A mainstream historical fact is the profound influence of Freudian theory on 20th century art, literature, and culture. The idea that our deepest truths are revealed when our guard is down put a new, intellectual sheen on the act of dozing. It was now a journey into the self. A quirky tidbit from this era involves Freud's own well-documented use of cocaine, which he initially prescribed to patients, and took himself for, among other things, depression and fatigue. He saw it as a miracle drug. So, the man who was mapping the unconscious mind and sanctioning therapeutic napping was also, for a time, enthusiastically fueling himself with a powerful stimulant. It's a bizarre contradiction, chemically inducing wakefulness to better understand the secrets of sleep. Historians still argue whether the Freudian slip and the analysis of dream content genuinely revealed deep unconscious processes, or if they were clever, post hoc interpretations imposed on random neural noise, the brain screensaver, misinterpreted as a masterpiece. As you lie on the couch, your thoughts unraveling like a spool of thread dropped on the floor, you feel the old Victorian guilt evaporate. This isn't laziness. This is work, hard, introspective work. The pressure to stay awake is gone, replaced by an instruction to let go. The jokes here are dry, intellectual. A patient might wake from a short doze and say, "I suppose my ID was tired of my ego's commentary," and the analyst might give a quiet, knowing hum. You are exploring the inner savannah now, a landscape of symbol and memory where the predators are your own anxieties. The nap has been redeemed, not by religion or wellness, but by the promise of self-discovery. The room is dim, the scratch of the pen is steady, and you drift, not away from the world, but deeper into the most mysterious world of all, your own mind. The barriers are down, the censor is off duty, you are free to dream. The sound is a low, constant, earth-shaking hum. It is not the shriek of a single factory, but the combined industrial breath of a nation at total war. You are a welder on the graveyard shift in a vast aircraft plant, your world reduced to the blinded blue-white arc of your torch and the skeletal frames of bombers taking shape in the gloom. You've been here for 10 hours. Your hands tremble with the fatigue that has seeped into your marrow. The goggles chafe your face, and the smell of ozone and molten metal is a permanent stain in your nose. Every instinct screams for rest, but the message is everywhere. On posters slapped onto the corrugated iron walls, "We can do IT, work to win." The pressure is immense, patriotic, and utterly exhausting. You are not just building a plane. You are fighting the war with every rivet. And sleep is the enemy. Or is it? Because a new message is starting to filter through the fatigue. A message from scientists, not propagandists. They've been studying you, and workers like you. They've clocked the drop in output after the 8th hour, the rise in catastrophic errors after the 10th. They've calculated that a tired worker is a dangerous worker. And in a plant full of explosives and precision machinery, dangerous is a luxury no one can afford. So, a radical idea is born, not from a place of compassion, but from cold, hard, strategic necessity, the mandated power nap. You are no longer a lazy liability if you rest. You are a soldier on the production front, and your weapon is your alertness. Your nap has been drafted. This is the great wartime paradox. The same industrial machine that decades before had annihilated natural sleep rhythms now had to strategically reintroduce them for the sake of ultimate efficiency. The power nap was weaponized. Studies, some of them chillingly conducted in the relentless darkness of submarine patrols or the dizzying altitudes of bomber crews, proved that even 20 minutes of sleep could dramatically reset cognitive function and reflexes. It wasn't about deep, restorative sleep. It was a tactical pit stop for the brain. A mainstream historical fact is the unprecedented mobilization of science during WWII. From the Manhattan Project to operational research like this, they were optimizing everything. And the human worker was just another system to be tuned for maximum output. Your body and its need for rest became a matter of national security. A wonderfully quirky tidbit from this era involves the British Ministry of Information, which actually produced short, dull radio programs specifically designed to be so boring they would help listeners fall asleep during the blackouts, a kind of audio melatonin to combat the anxiety of air raids. Meanwhile, factory managers, initially skeptical, were converted when they saw the numbers. A brief, sanctioned rest period didn't lose time. It saved time by reducing errors and accidents. Historians still argue whether this widespread, state-sanctioned acceptance of napping was a genuine turning point in Western attitudes toward rest, or if it was purely a temporary, pragmatic measure for the duration of the war, a tool to be discarded the moment peace returned, and the old pressures of industrial productivity came back. As the shift foreman blows a whistle, a new, different sound that means rest, not run, you stagger to a designated rest area, little more than a darkened corner with some wooden benches. You don't need a pillow. You slump against the wall, your helmet clunking softly against the concrete. The hum of the plant continues, but for you, it fades into a distant drone. This isn't the creative nap of the Renaissance or the therapeutic nap of Freud. This is a utilitarian recharge. You are a battery, and they are plugging you in for a quick boost. The pressure is still there, the patriotic weight, but its form has changed. It now tells you to close your eyes, to sleep, to become more efficient for the war machine. It's a bizarre, cold comfort, but as you drop into an almost instant, hard sleep, you understand. You are not napping for yourself. You are napping for victory. Your snore is a tiny, personal contribution to the Allied war effort. The hum is different here. It's the low, persistent drone of servers, the clatter of keyboards, the soft ping of a new email hitting your overcrowded inbox. You are a software engineer in a sprawling Silicon Valley campus in the late 1990s. And the currency here isn't munitions or textiles, it's innovation, and innovation, the prevailing wisdom insists, is a round-the-clock endeavor. You've been debugging the same stubborn line of code for 5 hours. Your eyes are dry and gritty from staring at the hypnotic pulse of a cursor on a black screen. The free gourmet coffee has long since stopped working, leaving you with nothing but jitters and a profound, brain-deep fatigue. The promise of stock options and a foosball table in the break room feels like a distant, hollow joke. The pressure is immense, a low-grade psychic hum of your own making, amplified by the sight of your colleagues, all still hunched intently at their glowing monitors. You are battling the most frustrating enemy of all, your own burnt-out brain. And then you see it, tucked away in a corner, next to a vintage arcade machine and a fridge full of artisanal cold brew, is something new. It looks like a giant, white, plastic egg, or a pod for a very stylish astronaut. This, a memo from HR cheerfully declared, is a metamorphosis pod, a nap pod. The company, in its infinite and baffling wisdom, has decided that the path to greater productivity isn't just through caffeine and crunch time, it's through sanctioned, strategic sleep. This is the corporate nap, and it is deeply, profoundly awkward. It feels less like a wellness initiative and more like a bizarre science experiment. The message is clear. We own your waking hours, and now, we're coming for your dreams, too. This is the era where the wartime power nap gets a capitalist makeover. Studies from NASA, no less, showed that a 26-minute nap improved pilot performance by 34% and alertness by 54%. This was catnip for the tech industry, always hunting for an edge. The nap was rebranded. It was no longer about rest or health. It was about cognitive recalibration and peak performance optimization. It was a biohack. A mainstream historical fact is the dot-com boom's intense, almost cult-like focus on disrupting everything, from commerce to communication. Why not disrupt sleep? The goal was to engineer the perfect worker, one who could code through the night, nap for 20 minutes, and return to the keyboard with the vigor of a new day. The pressure to perform didn't lessen. It just incorporated a new, weirdly intimate demand. You must now be optimally rested to meet our insane expectations. A wonderfully quirky tidbit from this time is the sheer, over-engineered absurdity of the first-generation nap pods. They came with built-in privacy domes, speakers that played soothing audio tracks of babbling brooks, and timers that would gently vibrate you awake, because a sudden alarm would defeat the purpose of the relaxing experience. They were technological solutions to a human problem, and using one felt deeply unnatural. You'd climb in, the pod would seal with a soft hiss, and you'd lie there in the semi-darkness, hyper-aware that your boss and your co-workers were just feet away. and that your performance review might somehow include a metric on how efficiently you napped. Historians still argue whether the introduction of nap pods in the workplace represented a genuine positive shift in corporate culture towards employee well-being, or if it was simply a more sophisticated form of control, a way to extract even more productivity from workers by managing their fatigue, keeping them on campus longer, and further blurring the line between life and work. You finally give in. The code isn't getting fixed. You slide into the pod, the lid closing over you like a clamshell. It's quieter in here, but your mind is racing. Are people judging me? Is this a test? What if I snore? This isn't the fearless nap of the siesta or the strategic nap of the wartime welder. This is a nap fraught with anxiety, a performance of rest for the benefit of your productivity metrics. You close your eyes, not to escape the sun or to dream, but to become a better employee. The pod hums softly. Somewhere, a server rack blinks. You drift into a fitful 20-minute sleep, haunted by the ghost of a missing semicolon. When the vibration wakes you, you feel disoriented, a little groggy, and no closer to solving the problem. But you are, technically, recalibrated. You slide out of the pod, blink in the bright office light, and shuffle back to your desk. The nap is over. The work is still there. The experiment continues. The world is silent, but your mind is not. It's 2:17 a.m., and the glow of your smartphone is the only light in the room. You've scrolled through the curated lives of strangers, read the headlines of distant disasters, and now you race staring at an online shopping page for a device that promises to solve the very problem it helped create. A $300 sleep robot that will use gentle rocking and white noise to lull you into the restful slumber your hyper-connected life has stolen. This is the modern frontier of the nap, a paradox. We are more sleep-deprived than any generation in human history, and yet we are also more obsessed with optimizing, tracking, and engineering every single second of the rest we so desperately crave. You are no longer just napping. You are attempting to hack your own biology with technology, trying to force a natural process into a state of unnatural perfection. You slip on your sleep tracking ring, a sleek titanium band that feels less like jewelry and more like a medical monitor. You place the sensor pad under your mattress. You open the app that will score your night, judging the quality of your deepest, most vulnerable self. The pressure is immense, but it's a new kind, the pressure of quantified self-optimization. The nap is no longer a surrender, it's a data set. You don't just wake up feeling refreshed. You wake up to a graph showing your heart rate variability, your time in REM, your sleep latency. A bad score feels like a personal failure. The corporate nap pod of the 90s has been miniaturized and brought into the home, turning your bedroom into a personal sleep lab, where you are both the scientist and the experimental subject. You are trying to purchase what your ancestors got for free, a perfect, restorative pause. A mainstream historical fact is the staggering growth of the sleep technology industry, a multi-billion-dollar market fueled by our collective insomnia and anxiety. We are trying to solve a societal problem: the erosion of natural sleep rhythms by artificial light, globalized work schedules, and the endless dopamine drip of our devices with consumer gadgets. It is a bizarre feedback loop. The technology that broke our sleep now promises to fix it. For a price. The humble nap has been stripped of its simplicity and dressed up in the language of biohacking and wellness, another metric to be optimized in the relentless pursuit of peak performance. The goal is no longer just to rest, but to achieve the ultimate rest, to wake up not just refreshed, but optimized. A quirky and slightly dystopian tidbit is the emergence of smart pillows with built-in speakers that play binaural beats, or mattresses that can gently warm your feet to encourage drowsiness and then cool your core body temperature to lock in sleep. There are even apps that use your phone's microphone to analyze your snoring and then play subtle, corrective sounds to nudge you into a different sleep position. We are building a Rube Goldberg machine of rest, a complex system of gadgets all trying to achieve what a dark, quiet room and a regular schedule used to provide naturally. Historians still argue whether this tech-driven approach to sleep is a net positive, finally giving us the data and tools to address a critical health issue, or if it is merely exacerbating the problem by making us anxious about the very act of sleeping, turning a passive state into an active, stressful performance. As you finally put the phone down and close your eyes, the weight of the tracking ring on your finger, you feel the absurdity of it all. You are lying in the safest, most comfortable environment any human has ever slept in. You are warmer, softer, and more secure than any king in history. And yet, rest feels more elusive than ever. The nap, that ancient, primal birthright, has become another item on your to-do list. Another thing to be managed, measured, and mastered. You take a deep breath, and for a moment, you try to forget the gadgets. You try to ignore the data. You try to just sleep. Like a Roman in his villa. Like a monk in his cell. Like a trader in the desert shade. You let the weight of 10,000 years of nappers settle over you. The quest for the perfect nap may be endless, but the need for it is timeless. The machines can wait. The data will still be there in the morning. For now, there is only the dark, and the quiet, and the slow, merciful surrender. The gentle hum of the fan, the soft weight of your blanket, the distant, rhythmic sound of your own heart. These are the only metrics that matter now. Let the graphs and the scores and the relentless optimization fade into the background. Like a forgotten app running on a phone somewhere in another room, you have journeyed from the sun-scorched savannah to the silent glow of the screen. And you have carried one simple, unbreakable truth with you through all of it. Your body knows how to rest. It has always known. It is the oldest, wisest part of you. It remembers the shade of the acacia tree and the cool of the marble villa. It remembers the sacred silence of the monastery and the strategic pause of the wartime factory. All those centuries of practice, all those generations of yielding to the gentle pull of the afternoon, are encoded within you. A deep and quiet wisdom that no gadget can ever truly replicate or replace. So let it all go. Release the pressure, the guilt, the need to perfect this most imperfect of states. There is no score to beat, no record to set. There is only this moment, this breath, this soft, welcoming dark. Allow yourself to be exactly where you are and who you are, a human being, at the end of a very long day, in a very long history, finally, mercifully, coming home to rest. Let the silence hold you. Let the darkness be a friend. There is nothing more you need to do. There is nowhere else you need to be. Just breathe, just be, and gently, gently, let yourself drift.